You are listening to the B2B Marketing Mindset with Pete Monfre and Bill Lowell. We want to help demystify marketing to reduce risk, drive more and better opportunities, and grow your business. Are you ready to master marketing?
Well, it is Thursday, and let's get into the marketing mindset. The B2B marketing mindset, it's a special type of mindset. This week's topic, I want to talk about an idea that a lot of smaller and growing companies aren't familiar with, but it's a game changer for the big guys, and they use it all the time, and you should probably too. But first, let me introduce the boss. I just want to listen to that blues a little bit more. I'm sorry, you can't hear it, but I can. But the boss, Bill Lowell from Business Development Directives, a marketing research firm deep in the heart of Wisconsin. So, welcome.
Hey, thank you. How are you doing?
It just seems like I just talked to you.
Deja vu, right?
That's right, all over again. I have a question, though. Do you participate in schmelting at all? Schmelting.
I don't think so, but I don't, but it sounds.
You know what schmelt is? It's a little bitty fish.
I was just going to say it's a little fish, but
And
I also thought it might have been something that you were making fun of in a foundry too, so that's why.
That's true. Well, my grandfather worked in Milwaukee in a foundry at Falk
There you
Corporation. But the schmelt, apparently once a year, they somehow go bananas, and they all end up washing ashore all these little silver fish. And the cheeseheads, I'll call them that, they're out on the docks on Lake Michigan, and they have fryers, propane-powered fryers, and they're scooping them by the nets out of the water, and they're deep frying them on the spot and eating them whole.
Oh,
And that's called schmelting. It's usually freezing cold out when you're doing it, so I wondered if it was like during this season or anyway.
I haven't had the pleasure, but if any of our listeners are from Wisconsin and want to take me, I'll go with them.
Want to tune in? Yeah, they drink a lot during this as well, but you got to get your share of little tiny fish brains.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
So we got that going for us. We've totally forgotten about our little titles on the screen, but
Oh no. So it's
that's
not
okay.
It's not how to facilitate a schmelting.
It's not for schmelting, no. But anyway, we've got a great show. I think this is a really cool topic, and if you're seeing this on your favorite social media platform or you're listening out there in the land of podcast, head over to b2bmarketingmindset.com. We elaborate on these topics there and a lot more, and you can subscribe everywhere that fine podcasts are consumed. So it's crazy how this thing is like some kind of evil virus at this point, and so we hope that you catch it. Is it too soon for that joke?
It is
But I was thinking about this topic a lot, and this idea that there's a way of making decisions and kind of operating that seems like it's the realm of the big companies, but not anymore. And so a lot of companies may not even heard of this role for an outsider to play within their organization. So obviously they're not going to be able to take advantage of it because they're not familiar with it. So and here's an example of the problem they might have. And this is what I was thinking of because I hear about it so often. Teams will start doing a marketing plan, for example, whatever month, doesn't matter. 10 months later, if you're lucky, they emerge with a list of stuff to do and or spend money on. Not really a marketing plan. That should have taken weeks. And a good facilitator, you can bring in somebody from outside either, and there's a distinction we'll talk about, with expertise and domain expertise, an expert in the transmission rebuilding industry, who is a facilitator, right? My friend Dennis. And they work with your team. And so, but that's one reason is, it can take weeks instead. So,
the other thing, and I think you're absolutely right, and I've seen it from the side before you get it. And when I say you, meaning like the market planning, the people that put together market plans, because sometimes we'll do a research study for somebody, and to us, it is all so clear of what they should be doing in their next steps. And I'm like, I just handed you a bunch of gold, and it tells you exactly how to hit your customer. It just gives them everything. But they become overwhelmed because it might be an 80-page report, or there might be a lot of different graphs and charts, and they're like, where do we start? So to your point, a good facilitator can help cut through some of that stuff. But if you're doing it on your own, I can see sometimes why it takes 8 months just because there's so much stuff. Where do we start? You know?
Trying to get consensus, for example. A lot of this is team dynamic stuff. And so, and the consultant, the expertise person, subject matter, domain expertise, whatever it is, there is some overlap with facilitators. You just gave such a great example. But, there's no way to get around a certain level of complexity when you're trying to work out business problems. And so sometimes the recommendations can be pretty complex, and clients need time to digest that, and then they often will call us back in to then facilitate the team to address, whatever is in those recommendations, create a plan, whatever it is, right? Create a message, do any sort of initiative where there's a team involved and they're making decisions. That's where these facilitators come in. And, full disclosure, Bill and I are both consultants and facilitators. But here's the internet's definition.
Oh, no. Oh, my.
I went and looked up my own job.
Okay.
A facilitator, I liked this though. A facilitator is an individual whose job is to help teams manage a process of information exchange, usually for the purposes of decision making.
Okay.
Wow, and it's not Wikipedia. I wish I could remember the source, but whoever you are out there, you kind of nailed it, I think.
I don't know about that.
No, maybe not.
I would add some things. Because, in my opinion, I think making a decision is an important thing, but I think the facilitator can also help you to come up with creative or brainstorming ideas. So maybe somebody's trying to come up with new products, new services. That would be something that, I don't know that you need to get to a decision right there, but maybe you just want a lot of opportunities on the phone, or on the table. And sometimes I break them into 3 categories. I say, definitely, like you said, coming to a decision and needing help to get it to a decision. But I also say information, like what do we need to do, maybe from a brainstorming, let's come up with all kinds of ideas. But the other one might be like a prioritization. So what happens if we come to a decision, but now we need to know where to start, or we have all these ideas, let's do some facilitation to get, what are our top 3 priorities or top 4,
That's an excellent point of nuance. In fact, in my mind, when you're doing brainstorming, you're engaged in a process of information, but you're right. You're not necessarily making decisions as much as you've got a pre-described output that you're trying to get from this team, and that can be frustrating if you work in an organization, right? If people don't realize that a facilitator is a set of skills and tools, and it's very specific to help teams do a whole bunch of stuff, depending on what it is that where you're trying to go, but I think one hard part for companies is kind of christening that outsider with some leadership authority.
Yeah.
And big companies don't even blink twice. Yeah. They're like, I'm going to count on you to make this happen, or 10 people above me are going to be all over my ass. But when you own the company, you're the leader, right? Why would you bring in somebody else to lead your team? It doesn't make sense, but it might if you keep listening.
Yeah, definitely.
Or maybe not for you, but for a lot of smaller companies, they're realizing that it's a boss move. Let's put it that way in the youngster speak.
I can either give you a comment or I can wait till the next slide, whatever.
No, go ahead. I want to define this well, and we'll get into some of the reasons why it makes sense.
A couple things that I just wanted to mention, though, just because you said, maybe they're used to leading themselves. So it could be a CEO or a president or somebody who's a leader of an organization that might be a middle market company or professional service organization, something like that. And like you said, they're so used to leading that they think they can do it on their own. And they probably can to a certain extent.
Oh, yeah.
But sometimes they want to be part of the process or part of the decision-making in the strategic, And so sometimes if you want to be a participant rather than leading, it's a great reason to hire an outside facilitator to do that.
What a great way to be a servant leader, to not be autocratic. And this is the example I thought of, is when companies start to move away from an autocratic style of management to a participatory one, facilitators worth their weight in gold, right? I'm probably worth a couple hundred myself. And so, it's winter. It's tactical cushioning, we call it. But and like I said, it's easier than ever. So here's some five. So we thought we'd do 5 reasons why it might make sense for you to bring in an insider, or I'm sorry, bring in an outsider, innie or outie, I don't know, whichever it is. Bring in an outsider to help increase the quality and velocity of, I said decision making, but team.
Well, information gathering, I mean, could be, like we talked about, it could be brainstorming, but it could also be prioritizing those decisions too. So, I mean, maybe we've come to a decision, but like, how are we going to bring 5 things down to 2 actionable items or something like that?
Well, and we'll get into this a little bit, and this is where the facilitator, they come in with a structure. We'll be talking about that in a little bit. So there's really some hard tack reasons, I would call them, that it maybe it does make sense. And we're not just biased because it's something that we do, but we don't, we can't service everybody that wants to hire us. So we just thought we'd show you how it works, and then we probably know everybody, so we could still introduce you, but. So one big thing, this is huge, I think, and this is where the consultant and the facilitator are they cross paths a little bit, but objective, experienced perspective. So, objective, you're not going to get that from an internal person or yourself.
No.
Experience, oftentimes facilitators look like me, that can be super valuable. Maybe they've been there 10 times in their career already, right? The challenges that you're facing, but I think the perspective part is probably one of the most valuable things, where they're seeing, I don't know where this came from, but it's the story of the frog in the well.
Yeah.
So there's this frog inside of a well. This is probably not the way the story is told. This is the condensed version. Can't see shit. Can't see nothing down there. It's dark. It's wet. Frogs like that, but it sucks for him. The well being your business, the frog being you. I don't think this is how the story is told, but I wanted it to be clear.
I'm anxious to see where this is going.
Then there's this other frog who's sitting on top of the well, and he can see the entire world. Right? The frog in the well. Badly told. Thank you very much. Wish we had a little applause sound effect. Can we have that? Can we have an applause sound effect? They said yes.
So what you're saying is sometimes,
but not today.
Sometimes it's better to step back and see, work, on the business rather than working in it. Is that what you're kind of saying?
Well, yeah. There's this perspective, and it's one of the bullet points later on too, from an outsider that maybe has worked across a bunch of different industries and a bunch of different sizes of clients and types of clients and different types of business models, and it's just different how they work, right? And some of that has to do with structure that they might bring to the table. Like we have what we call MAPS, a market action planning system. It's a framework that we use to help people make better marketing decisions. And so a lot of times we're not the ones telling you what the answer is. This is one of the biggest parts of confusion, I think, in our business. Bill, I want you to tell me what we should do. This is like our first phone call together, right? The first 4 seconds of our first phone call upon meeting. I'd like you to tell me what I should do.
Good. Cut me a check and let's go to lunch.
There you go. That's the step 1. We're a barber shop. All right, what should we do? It's really not what a facilitator consultant does. It's that they know the questions to ask, and they have a framework to compress the time to go through all of those options and to organize people and to get that consensus and to move to defined steps and boom, get to the specific point where you need to be at the end of that process or initiative or whatever it is. Not in 10 months, a few weeks. And so, but so that's part of that perspective where it's like they see your business from a completely different place than you do. And I know you and I both have brought in people that are in our own discipline. Well, I think you have. I know we've brought in marketing people to help us. You've helped us in years past and current, but we can't see our own well sometimes. So I think that's super valuable. So
I think that's a good thing. And one of the very first questions that I ask my clients if they're going to retain us to do facilitation, I ask them right off the bat, is my role an independent facilitator where my job is strictly to facilitate, keep us on time, and get us to an outcome? Or am I to do all of that and give you my perspectives? Because those are two really big things. And
Right.
sometimes they'll say, oh, we want your expertise, so jump in when you want. So then I will. But if they say,
Right.
no, just do the facility, then I will never make a comment. So you got to be real
Right.
clear, I think, at the beginning of what's the expectation. Just like you said, if they say, tell us what to do, okay, well, we can tell you, you know?
That's a great point, because, and I'm not going to say every point you make is great, but so far you're batting 1,000.
I better get off the podcast right now. Well,
Oh, you're ahead. No, I think it's huge, because it's getting an expert and a facilitator confused.
Yes.
Right? And sometimes the same person can do either or both of those things, but you got to be clear about, sometimes companies that they don't need maybe they have tons of experience in marketing or marketing research,
Yeah.
but they need somebody to basically help them in spite of themselves.
Yes.
Move to a specific place, and to codify that usually.
Yeah.
Like it's something that it's about the process as much as it is about the outcome. And so, but leads us to our next point. These people have specific expertise in working with teams, right? And tools. I want to throw that in there, but so often nowadays, people in either sales, marketing, you don't see this much in finance or engineering, but you do see this in sales and marketing a lot, where they don't realize that it's an entire discipline with educational requirements and certain amount of experience to be. I saw on LinkedIn there a 22-year-old business coach last week. She wanted to connect. I connected with her.
Good for you.
But I'm curious as to where she's coming from, honestly. But maybe she's a genius. Who knows? But it's just, it's a discipline. Facilitation, working with teams, getting consensus. It's a management discipline. And somebody on, Rhonda in HR might be a brilliant friggin' HR person, but maybe not have the specific skills and tools that a professional facilitator would have. Is that fair to Rhonda?
Yeah, I actually think it is, and I'm going to defend Rhonda for just a second.
I don't want to get on her bad side, but
sometimes, yeah, because sometimes organizations or leaders think just because Rhonda is an outstanding HR professional that she naturally can do facilitation well. And maybe that's just like you said, it's not one of her skill sets yet. Maybe she's still learning them. So,
well, it's like hiring these really bright, really sharp, recent college grad and expecting them to do something that they've literally never done before, or, have any training in, or vice versa, having an employee and being like, you're the marketing guy now. Hey, it's your job now to run the agency, to run our advertising agency. And that person's like, I have no idea how to run an advertising agency. It's the same thing, right? So there are people that are just naturally good at it. Absolutely. It's not impossible, but we're just saying there's a shortcut of bringing in a facilitator.
Yeah, they're definitely are. And I'll tell you a secret, I think I'm a great facilitator. I really do. And usually I don't break too much.
I think you are.
But I've done so many sessions and focus groups that I like to think I'm really good at it. But even when I thought I was really good before, I met 3 people that helped me so much, that gave me other stuff to think about, where I went, oh, wow, they are so good. So one was Judy Whalen. She's a strategic planning consultant, and she's like scary good. But the techniques that she uses was great. And then I met another one. Her name was Esther Letvin, and she was at another university here in Wisconsin. She gave me a whole kit of tools that I could use. And I was like, oh my God, these are so good. I used some of them, but I never knew that there were so many available. And she really opened my eyes. And then there was another gentleman by the name of Tom Bug. I don't know if you know him, but just a great business consultant.
That name's familiar.
Yeah, he's done consulting for a long, long time, but he did some facilitation, and he had some really good tricks. So it's like, you can learn from other people doing this, is my message. And especially even when you're good, you can get better at it.
Absolutely. And I love it when you mention people that sort of ring a bell with me. Bill and I both are from the same part of the country, and that's where we met, and we ran our businesses out of Milwaukee. And you were in Brookfield, though, I think. Brown Deer?
I was downtown.
We're downtown
Milwaukee
also.
I was downtown, yeah. But then eventually we went up to Mech One.
So it was easy to get to our place then, probably.
Yeah, it was.
But one time we had a big snowstorm at night, and I couldn't get my car out of that parking lot. Do you remember the steep incline of the driveway into that office building complex? We parked in there in the morning, totally dry. By time to go home afternoon, got to leave my car there overnight. Thank you, Wisconsin, for that. This is a thing too. I talked to a friend yesterday who's a business broker, and he said, he helps people buy businesses and sell them. And he said he was working with a freelancer to build a website and do some other things, and the firm they were working with just disappeared on, like poof, gone. I know. Is that crazy or what? Now, my wife's the creative director, Heidi. Her team helps us run the show when I'm not fumbling over it myself here. But and I've been in the marketing business for 30 years. You've been doing this, working for yourself, running your company. I can't imagine a scenario where I would dream of doing that. You know what I mean? It's hard to believe. But do you hear that all the time? I mean, I kind of hear that all the time.
Where somebody decides to do it themselves, you mean, or
the phenomenon where the person that maybe is a freelancer or somebody on Upwork or somebody who knows, they just disappear in the middle of a project.
So they've ghosted themselves.
It's surprisingly common, yeah. I don't imagine you get paid when you do that, but it happens a lot. So
it's sad.
So listen, we hear it all the time, and it's creative and technical people, and so you get tired of disappointment. And you want to upgrade your creative team to a higher level of professionalism and reliability. Think about Heidi Designs. It's not just great work. It's the professionalism and consistency. Everybody gets to a certain point, I think, when they're working with certain, freelancers and your nephew and the side hustler and the Upworkers and all this, where it's like we need some consistency and we need some reliability. So you get all the flexibility and affordability of contract labor, but without the drama. And that was a nice picture of her. Here's her website, heidi-designs.com. Full disclosure, she's my wife, and I've been working with her for 34 years, but she has her own company. She's a creative director, and if you've got something, you need something built, you need something made, whether that's email marketing, web development, sales materials, you can count on them to help you create. Well, we count on them to help us create this whole thing and distribute it.
I'm just going to say, she's a great
illustrator.
It. She's an excellent illustrator as well. And for those people who have not met Heidi, she's just a wonderful person. So she's really easy and nice to work with.
Everybody likes her. They don't like me as much, but they always are like, they're like, I don't really like you that much, but I really like her. But the thing is, this is 30. Well, we say we've been in business 33 years, but I don't know if you recall, she was at Birdsell Voss when I met her. So, and I think they were an Omnicom agency by then. And so I snatched her away from Birdsell Voss, and NML followed her, right? And so Eaton followed her, this was back in the day. And so she's just very good at her job, and she has a team of people, all US based people, and we rely on them. Like I said, I don't have to sweat any of this. There's no drama. Anyway, most boring creative agency in America, we like to call them. Let's get to our next point.
Okay.
That was a smooth little commercial, though, wasn't it?
I think one that was well deserved.
Well deserved. Do a lot of syndicating a program like this. If you're curious about it, and you may be thinking about doing podcasting yourself, shoot me a message. And if you're interested in being a guest, you can also reach me very easily on LinkedIn. It's really a trip how we do this, and it's kind of a marvel too, the technology and how it works. And in fact, we just had some visitors. I don't know if you saw me waving, but some visitors in the studio today, and they walked by and they waved at me.
That's sweet.
They're trying to be polite. I don't know. Heidi's better at that. So, next point, bringing structure to decision making. Now, see, I said decision making again, but it's structure to team dynamic.
Well, I think to whatever facilitation needs to be done. So whatever they need to accomplish, having a structure to it really is important. But I think, and I'll let you comment first, but I just want to tell you that I will always develop what I call my plan book going into a facilitation, but I rarely use the plan because so much stuff, I don't want to say goes wrong, but it goes in a different direction that you didn't plan for. But if you have a plan in place going into it with that structure, you know other things that you can get to get people working. Because if something doesn't work or everybody's quiet or we're not getting where we need to go, you can change up gears. And boy, I think that that's really important with the structure.
Well, you know what they say, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah, exactly.
I believe that was a terrible Mike Tyson impersonation. Make sure my door is locked.
He wasn't one of the visitors, was he, that was coming?
No. If he was, I'd get him on. I'd get him right on. Come on, Mike, give us some more wisdom. He's right. What makes me think of is there's specialized types of facilitation too. Like we do marketing plans, and oftentimes our facilitation is around getting that plan done. Now that doesn't mean we couldn't facilitate other things. We've facilitated brainstorming. We've facilitated even team building. We've facilitated all kinds of things. But our main thing is that. But facilitators might be generalists and they might be specialists. And kind of a toss-up. Sometimes you want that generalist to be cross-pollinating ideas from other things. They're not as cookie-cutter, or maybe you want that person who only does this one thing. I don't know. There's a lot of dynamics there. I think both of them can be good.
Yeah, I'll give you a
good
funny
options.
one. So there is a very large client of mine. I mean, very large, and we don't do it anymore, but.
Like 8 or 9 feet tall, like 9 feet tall.
They're big. If I mentioned it, I'd get myself in some serious trouble. But every year we would help facilitate their budget process. So talk about crazy out of the box. But it's like you said, you get a big organization and people can't decide, or everybody thinks their priorities are the most important. Well, how do you do that? Well, sometimes an outside facilitator is a necessary thing to help you put that together.
What a great segue to the next point. I think we could cover more on that point, but and we will. If you go to b2bmarketingmindset.com, there's going to be more. It'll hit there tomorrow. It'll hit all our syndication out tomorrow. And, there's a lot more to this. So the outsider's advantage, you kind of hinted at that in your answer there. Tell me about what advantages outsiders have.
A couple of things. I think the outsider, we can be unbiased and neutral. So it's like, did I care? I mean, the budget thing was a weird one, so I'd rather go back to your ideas about marketing or strategic planning, but we are not invested in the outcome. I mean, we are because we want to see them get to the outcome, but I don't care if one department gets more money. Let's just make sure that people get to where they need to go. If it's coming up with a new product or development ideas, let's get them to where they need to go. So I think having some of that ability, being neutral, is really good. I think being able to be to throw out good questions like you mentioned before, Pete, and I would also say, like, what kind of probes, throwing out a probe, knowing how to challenge somebody, I would say getting good participation. So you've got somebody who's been there very, very quiet throughout the entire meeting. You got to call them out, so, hey, Pete, I noticed you've been really quiet on this. What thoughts do you have? Get them to draw it out because, as you know, and you and I have been trained by a few of the right people on this one, but sometimes people aren't allowed to have a good idea until their boss thinks of it first. Yep. And so sometimes that boss is there and people are quiet. Well, unbiased facilitator is going to draw that person out. And if the boss starts chiming in, they're going to say, hey, George, take it easy for just a second. Let's listen to what, like you said, what Robin says here, and then we'll get to you. So you can be like a traffic cop, and you can do it in a nice way, but you can get what I call balanced participation too. So I can go on all day just about that.
Oh, absolutely. And you I love that you mentioned the commonality of where we come from a business standpoint, and we started our companies around the same time, and we have some of the same influences and teachers and that kind of thing. So I think that's really kind of cool. But the budget thing, I think it's a great example because it's usually there's a lot of passions around
Yeah.
budgets, right? And so if you could be a dispassionate facilitator, and look, we build budgets based on math, okay? There's not a whole lot of emotion involved in it. It's either, these numbers are going to be most companies are trying to get to the minimum amount of money to invest to create a given outcome. And so the only way I know how to do it is math. But that's usually not how budgets are created, even in these really big companies. I mean, I remember just the whim of some upper management was the metric that the budget was created by. But it's actually quite a big process in a lot of companies. And, having somebody at the helm of that process, you're probably going to get better outcome. And it's not going to take 10 weeks or 11 or 12 or a month or a year to get. It's like this stuff has to happen like this at the fortune level. But I'd say it needs to happen as fast as you want to get through whatever it is you're trying to process with the team so that you can execute, right? So you want to execute sooner than later. This is where I think facilitators have huge value is the final point here is compressing the decision-making time, compressing the time. Take that, and I have a thought that I want to share before I'll try not to forget.
How to compress time? So,
how do facilitators compress time?
Okay, well, I'll give you a couple examples. So, and I was going to give you another example about interesting, difficult ones. I facilitated a session between two very, very diametrically opposing religious groups.
Wow.
And they wanted to better understand and see how they could work together for some common good. And that was a challenge. I did their strategic planning, and so that was tough. But with regard to, and this is what you're going to tell me because you're saying, Bill, you're going off on all these tangents. A good facilitator will be able to say, all right, that's really interesting. We need to move on. So you talk about time compression. Put them in blocks of time, and when you get to a certain state, you got to move on. Or if somebody is like going on and on and on like I am, tell them you got to put this in a parking lot. We'll get to this at the end of the day or at the end of the session, or we'll try to decide if that's still important. So there's things you can do to get people going on. Weighted voting, getting people to actually put some numbers to whatever decisions they're making. There's lots of ways to compress that, but sometimes this can go on forever if you do it yourself. And with an outside facilitator, they want to see it come to an end with their time, their time factor.
Well, yeah, I think the thing I agree with all of that. I mean, I think that the thing that I was thinking too was in situations where maybe you're going from autocratic to more participatory type of manager decision making, that leadership wants to still make sure that things are done the way that they see fit. Probably their company, or they own the majority shares, or they're the biggest stakeholder, or whatever. Yeah. So what happens in a lot of companies, and one reason it takes so long sometimes, is they tend to do it in little pieces, and so the management has to keep being drawn into little tiny meetings, a lot of them over a long period of time, to tackle all this stuff. Where a facilitator can cover all that ground in weeks, and then the upper management, ownership, whatever it is, they get full say and approval on everything that goes on. It gets captured into a plan, and they know that people are going to follow the way that they want. But instead of them spending 200 hours in meetings, maybe they have a couple of 90-minute sessions. Yeah. And it's done.
Exactly.
I mean, it's crazy how well this works. And so many smaller, let's say SMBs, small mid-sized companies, they're not aware that this is an option. Am I surmising that? It's just a theory. It's just a theory.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. And the other thing that I think really helps out, like when you get that facilitator, is just like you talked about, if somebody's making that transition to more an inclusive organization, I think getting the other participants' buy-in is really important when you have an outside facilitator, because they're going to help that process rather than to have it be dominated by one person or two people. So I think that's
well, then the outsider advantage also, and I can't count the number of times I've had to preface my comments with saying, well, you're probably going to fire me for telling you this, and then I say whatever it is that's super truthful and honest. And honestly, that's a lot of people getting a paycheck from a CEO are not going to be willing to go up against that person and disagree with them and push it to the point where policy is changed. Outsiders, there's a curious thing about it. They do listen. There's some social phenomenon that people listen to outsiders more than they listen to their internal people. I'm sorry about it, but it's an advantage that we have.
Well, and sometimes people are on their best behavior if there's an outsider there, rather than seeing some of the stuff that may go on by themselves,
Well, it's true, but other times they're threatened by them too. And I always tell people that you really shouldn't be, because the success criteria for a facilitator is to really making that team look like rock stars and really supporting that stakeholder, CEO, president, whoever's in charge of everything, and supporting their interests too. And a lot of times those people, they don't want to dictate everything. They want their team to participate, but maybe there's a social dynamic there that makes that hard. Or maybe there's, facilitators are really trained to deal with this stuff, and they're very diplomatic. It's not like they're, calling people to the carpet, John, you haven't been talking for 3 hours. Get out. No, it's a very cool thing, and I think the outcomes are better. I mean, I don't think so. I know they are. And so something to think about. And, you can head over to b2bmarketingmindset.com, and by tomorrow, so this is usually how it works, live on Thursday, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. I knew I was forgetting one. LinkedIn.
Spotify.
And then, the next day it goes on the website that as on the screen, and then goes out to every major podcasting platform, so you can catch that. It's just more information. There's so much more that I would love to cover, and we'll get that usually up by the next day. There's a little lead time there because we put a lot of work into this thing because we want you to understand stuff. We don't want you to be hiring people blindly. It doesn't matter if you hire us, hire somebody else. We just want you to be informed in your own decision-making around marketing. And having a facilitator is probably a great idea. Let's go to final thoughts, and we will wrap this up, hopefully, if I can find the right button to push.
Final thoughts.
All right, the Chipmunk says final thoughts. What do you got?
I have a lot of different final thoughts, but the one I'm going to leave you with is, if you've got a company that you want to partner with, or that you want to do something with, maybe you're going to go after business together, or maybe you're in the construction trades and it's an engineering and architectural firm, or maybe it's a general contractor, a good facilitator will help facilitate how those two organizations can and should work together effectively. And I've done some of that, Pete, and it's almost like magical, because you really can get a lot of good out of that. So that's one of my final thoughts. So
I've never thought of that.
Expand your thoughts. Yep.
No, I never thought of that. But you say you have another one. No, we did start late, so we could take a little more time. But you said there was a couple of. Go ahead, tell us more, and I've got one last thought.
There's a lot of tools that I use. I would call them facilitators techniques, and I think, it would really probably behoove everybody to kind of look up some of those, because some of those tools really do help you get that process going. You know what I mean? So, for example, if you had a new product development that you were going to launch, or some new idea, there's one technique called the 6 hats. I don't know if you've ever heard of that technique.
I've heard of it, but
one group of people go and they look out for the facts. Like, what are the facts of us doing this? Another group goes away and they look at what are the things that could go wrong, or what should we watch out for. Another group looks at different alternatives. Another one talks about just the process of making this happen. You know what I mean?
Right.
Another
strengths, weaknesses, threats, opportunities, different tables. Oh, hello.
Yeah. And then another one does the emotional aspect, like what's the emotions gonna be. So anyhow, you get really good feedback, but those tools help bring people together towards what you're trying to accomplish without them even kind of knowing that we're doing a facilitated discussion. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. I think I'm really glad that that's a great final thought, actually. I should, if people have gotten this far into the podcast, thank you. Thanks for getting this far with us. We try to make this lively. I'm knocking shit over here in the studio. I'm flailing my arms around like Mario. I don't know what's going on there. But my thoughts are this. It's never been easier or more accessible to bring in a professional facilitator to help your team plan or strategize. It's not really just for the big guys anymore. I think some people think it's too expensive. What's expensive is taking 10 months to enact a plan before you can execute. So think it's a really good business decision, and it's just never been easier. You can level up instantly. Think about how long it takes to develop certain specialized skills internally. All right, we're going to teach John to do this stuff. Well, I hope you have a couple years to wait. When you bring in somebody from the outside, that frog from the well, instant upgrade in sophistication, in experience, in everything. And and then when you're done, you're done. They're not part of your fixed costs. So very easy to fix these kinds of problems.
And you talked about like the cost of not doing something. I'm not embarrassed to say it because we're not perfect, but early in our career, probably 10 years into it, I want to say our organization was pretty dysfunctional because my wife worked in it and so did I, and we had employees and, and just how people fit. We brought in a corporate psychologist who helped us through all of this stuff, including giving us assessments and stuff like that. And it kind of changed our course, which was really, really helpful. And so if we would have kept on the other way, like you were talking about, it would have been just constant, time wasting and going down the wrong paths and people fighting and having everybody doing their own thing. And it's like that was so valuable, and now everybody knows each other's roles, and it was kind of a lifesaver.
That's another area, family businesses, right, where you've got all these passions and maybe conflicting interests, and it could just be a lot easier and a lot less disruptive and faster. There's so many great reasons to work with a facilitator, but I hope we've picked up something you could use from today's show. That's always our goal, is something you could use. Let us know what you think in the comments, and we're going to post some links down there. Going to post a link to Heidi Designs. And thank you to Business Development Directives, Bill's company, for making this thing possible, Clarity Marketing Support. Till next week, sir. I didn't have my pocket square today.
Uh-oh.
So I'm a little underdressed, but...
Take mine out.
Excellent. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the B2B Marketing Mindset with Pete Monfre and Bill Lowell. Add to the conversation by commenting, sharing and liking. And don't forget to subscribe and check out the links in the comments. Learn more at b2bmarketingmindset.com.